today we're fortunate to spend time with Peter Knight. Peter's been one of Australia's premier coaches for the past 30 years, starting with beginner golfers all the way up to the elite. Peter's been one of the national coaches as well as coaches of the New South Wales Institute of Sport, and has basically coached golfers of all levels. So thanks for joining us, Peter. How did you get started in golf?
Oh, thanks, Gav. I started by caddying, which is something that really doesn't happen very often now, but I was 14 or maybe 15 and started caddying at Yarra Yarra partly because I wanted to earn some pocket money. So I was able to earn the princely sum of $1 for spending an afternoon pulling some medalist clubs around.
You don't look that old, Pete.
Yeah, I know. But it quickly went to $1.50. The bonus though was sometimes with some of the members you'd get a tip, and when you got halfway around you get a pie and a can of drink if you were lucky as well, and they would actually pay for it. But what it did is it allowed me to have access to Yarra Yarra in the afternoons after I think about 4 p.m. So during summer you could easily play 18 holes, and we were allowed to practice before that time, provided we were out of the way of the members. So we actually had great access to a really fantastic golf course.
It's a pity that's no longer really exists, like with the golf cart taking over, and yeah, people just don't do it anymore, unfortunately.
No, the golf cart has been one of the things. Also, the changing demographic and what young people want to do and how they want to spend their time. The other thing is insurances. With the cost of actually setting up something like that makes it prohibitive because you have to charge the members so much money to look to cover your costs. But people gladly take a golf cart for $25 to $30 now. So yeah, they should still be walking and having someone pull their clubs.
Absolutely. So why did you want to become a golf professional?
I've got this theory about golf pros. When we start, with rare exceptions, all we want to do is play golf. We want to play tournaments and everything that goes with that. Essentially, we want to be a golf bum. But what happens, and I was one, probably still am, but what happens is over time you realise that's not enough. And so to build it into a profession, you have to be something more than just a golf bum.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think there's a very big carrot dangling, especially now with the US playing for $5 million plus every week, and like as we both know, we've seen a lot of the players like Ogilvy and Allenby and Appleby that have such a great life living over in the States. So there is definitely that big carrot dangling to make it.
There is, and a lot of people look at that and say that's what I want to aspire to, and that's brilliant. Have your dreams, work towards those things. But recognise that the people that you're looking up to, the people that you're looking to model, are in the top. They're not even in the top, they're inside the top 1%. So, you have to start doing what they want to do, and it's not an easy road, but boy, if you get there, it's great fun. It's a brilliant lifestyle.
Absolutely. So you're one of only 3 coaches in Australia who are classed as a master professional.
Yeah. What
does it take to become a master professional?
The PGA brought in a master professional status because there were a growing number of us who were level 3 AAA, which is the highest accreditation that you can get that's recognised by the Australian Coaching Council. So what they decided is to create some form of recognition of elite coaches. So the criteria was that you had to be a member for a minimum of 20 years.
Okay.
You had to be a level 3 AAA coach for a minimum of 8 years. And then you had to either undertake a form of formal study and report on that, or create your own research project, which is what I did.
Okay. So that was on peak performance in sport, is that correct?
It was peak performance in elite golfers. So what I did is I took a lot of literature from psychology and from NLP and looked at what made players who were great tick. The other thing that I did is I created a survey and sent that out to some great players and got them to respond. And then what I did is I took the research from readings, and then I took the responses from the players, looked at what the common patterns were, and then created a paper around that, which explains sort of the theoretical side of it, what these players did, and then how the average player, or any player, can implement those things to help improve themselves.
Okay. So what about some of your highlights? Let's start with playing for a start. What's your highlight in golf from a playing point of view? Then we'll get into the coaching.
Playing. I'd never won a tournament, but I had a few high finishes in smaller events, so I was always going to be more a coach than a player. But I remember competing and just knowing that I was actually doing it as a profession and had the ability to earn money. Just the thrill of being able to do that, once I got over the initial nerves, but the thrill of doing that and the camaraderie of the rest of the guys. So playing was more about, for me anyway, it was more about camaraderie and having all of the other players around. So it's almost like a familial aspect that you have with those guys.
What about from a coaching point of view? You work with some of Australia's best up-and-coming juniors through the NSWIS program that is running. So,
coaching, I've got a lot of highlights, a lot of brilliant memories from coaching. Two or three, I guess. One was I started coaching the New South Wales junior boys team, and they hadn't had a win for 12 years in an interstate series, which is a round-robin event amongst all the states. And the first year I coached them, we won, and we actually won 5 in a row from there. So that was good for job security too. Then, after I'd completed all that, next phase I was coaching women's team in Victoria. And the women's team hadn't won for 14 years.
Yeah.
And the first year I coached them, they won too. So they were massive highlights, particularly for the people around me. You know, I'm a relative newcomer to that team. But there are others who have memories of going year after year and, you know, watching the winners accept the trophies and it not being them. And so just the joy that they got from that. But other things, you know, setting up the New South Wales Institute of Sport squad, which you mentioned, that was in 1997. That was a massive thrill too. And a lot of the players that came through that program have gone on, and they are the ones playing for those $5 million a week. And then in 2012, I went to Japan with an Australian junior team for the World Junior Teams Championship, and we won that. And the way that was treated from a very professional aspect from the people who were running the tournament, having media interviews and formal presentations, all that sort of thing, that was fantastic as well. But then even having, you know, a beginner make contact with the ball, see them get the ball in the air, and their faces light up. I love that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether it's what level it is, there's enjoyment in coaching right the way through.
I remember seeing a t-shirt a number of years ago that sums up the game of golf no matter what level you're at, and it had, "I hate golf, good shot, I love golf."
Yeah, that's right.
So like even as a golf pro, like, you know, hit that really perfect 6-iron into a couple of foot and you can tap it in. It's it still gives you that buzz, but we still hit wide shots, and it's going to be a very challenging game.
And you never lose that. You never lose. It doesn't matter. If you hit a ball out of the middle of the club, yes, your standards change, but for your own standard, if you hit a good shot, you just get off on that good shot just like you always did.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the best advice you've received along the way? I presume you would have done a little bit of work with Alex Mercer, who's one of our great coaches. Has he influenced you?
Yeah, I've had influence from so many different people. Alex was the New South Wales state team coach all of the time that I coached the junior team and the Colts team. So we would have camps together, and, you know, I'd sit and chat with him, watch him coach, listen to people that he'd been coached and say, you know, what are you learning and what are you doing? So, you know, sort of got to know pretty well how he coaches, and I'm very respectful of that. And then working with other, you know, most of the great Australian coaches, certainly over the last 30 years, I've had the opportunity to learn from them. And it's really hard to be specific about what I've learned from different coaches, but every one of them has influenced me, at least to a small extent. And I remember one of the first coaching summits that I went to, it was in University of New South Wales, and guys like Alex, Charlie Erb, and so many other coaches, good coaches, were there. And one of the things that they said at the time was that, you know, if you want to be a coach, it's a massive responsibility. You will never stop learning. And so it's sort of like, I actually agree with that anyway, but then to have that reinforced, it's like, it doesn't matter what achievements you have, there's going to be challenges, further challenges along the way. And so, you know, it's my responsibility as a coach to continually find ways to help people get better.
Okay. So what are your philosophies on the, let's start with the golf swing. There's so much involved with golf, whether it's the golf swing, short game, the mind game, but let's start with the golf swing. What do you think are the most important elements to a good golf swing?
There's a number of things. First of all, the golf ball only understands the message that the golf club gives it. So the club needs to move on a correct path, the club face needs to be aiming correctly when the ball's struck, all those sorts of things. So then you work backwards from there and say, well, how am I best going to be able to achieve that? So I need to have a reasonably sound grip and setup. If you've got those, then it really is more than half the game. Because if you're doing something where the foundation is shaky, then you've got to make so many adjustments that you're bound to have a movement that's just full of compensation. So set it up properly to begin with. And you know, some people come along for lessons and I'll say, you know, I thought I had this set up nailed. And then I'll explain to them that tour players and, you know, the best amateurs in the country, the thing that I'm looking for, and every other coach is looking for when they first see them, is to check how they're holding the club, how they're standing, what their posture's like, where they're aligned, all those sorts of things. So it's the, you know, the key things to do is set up. Grip, posture, ball position, alignment, all those sorts of things. So they need to understand those things. That's the first step.
Jack Nicklaus has a great quote. He says, golf's 50% mental, 40% setup, and 10% swing. Would you agree with that?
Generally, yes. I think there's a continuum that you work along. So for a beginner, I don't think golf's 50% mental. I think it might be 5% mental.
Yep. Because
if you have a golfer who has you know, really poor technique, then it doesn't matter how well they think, it's not going to help them get the ball in the hole. But then you have a player who, a tournament player who's under pressure, who has very sound technique, and suddenly that technique goes out the window when they're under pressure with a couple of holes to go, then it's probably 95% mental. And so there's a continuum that you work along, and you don't sort of shift and say and keep advancing. You move up and down that depending on the situation. But as a general statement, I reckon it's pretty right.
Okay. What about the short game? What's some good advice you've got for golfers? Like, how important is the short game?
Statistically speaking, putting makes up around about 40 to 42% of all the shots that are played. So, you know, if you're looking to try and find some way of influencing your performance, then putting is definitely your greatest leverage point. And then full shots make up, again, around about 40% of the game. And then the rest of the short game shots, chipping, pitching, putting and bunker shots, they make up around about 20%. So in that short game and putting, you've got 60% of the game. And that's where most players waste strokes too. So it actually finishes up being a much bigger proportion than what it should be.
It's probably the area where the average club golfer could actually improve the quickest. A lot of club golfers are never going to be able to hit the ball like Tiger Woods, but they can definitely improve how well they play inside 100 metres, but they sometimes not prepared to put the work in. Would you agree?
Yeah, look, I think some of it too, if you strike a shot, if you hit a drive and you get it out of the middle and you see it flying through the air, and even more if it impresses your mates. So, yeah, good for the ego. So, but hitting a pitch shot or a chip shot to somewhere near the hole so that you can hole the putt, the wow factor's not there, like it is for a full shot. It is on the scorecard at the end. So if you're signing for a score that's better than what they have, then they're buying the drinks.
So you prefer to hit a tee shot 270 straight down the middle than hole a 50-foot putt? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying for me. I'm always interested in what the score is, but yeah, I like hitting good drives too, just like everybody else.
Yeah. What about your ideas on coaching? I know you're very different to sort of the run-of-the-mill golf coach. Your website is golfpossibilities.com. So it's not just the golf swing. I know you choose more of a holistic approach towards your coaching. Yeah. What's your philosophy there on the coaching?
While it's still coaching, there's a number of things. First of all, that anything that happens on and off the golf course has an influence on the other thing. So the other thing is that how you, like a really good quote from a friend of mine that I carry with me everywhere, is that the best indicator of potential, the best indicator of success is how a person trains.
Okay.
So my role as a coach is partly to teach people how to train properly. And if I can do that, then I've provided probably a greater service than giving them the secret to the golf swing.
Yeah. So what's the best advice you can give a beginner golfer, somebody who's first starting out?
Beginning golfers are like most people, they might start off with grand ambition, but let's say we were a group of musicians and I'm a newbie to music, so I don't really know much about it. But my friends, they played in bands and all that sort of thing, and they're really quite proficient. And they might have been playing for a long time. You know, I wouldn't dream of expecting to be as good as them within, you know, a few weeks or a few months. And yet a golfer will actually do that. They'll expect to jump all of these learning steps in a real hurry, and then if they don't, they get frustrated and they get angry. And then on that last hole they hit that shot that brings it back. But if they understand that the game's enjoyable regardless of how you play, sometimes it's hard to see through that. It must be at some level if it brings you back. But first of all, it's just understanding that golf's not just about the game. You know, it's about the social aspects, being out there with friends and all that sort of thing. It is about improvement, and it's about self-improvement and doing all of the things that you can to make yourself better. So there's a lot more to the game than just trying to hit every single shot exactly how you want to. That might be your intention, but as a beginner, it's not going to happen.
Okay, what about looking at the best bit of advice for a club level golf? Let's say 18 handicapper maybe gets up the club maybe once a week. What's the best advice you can give to that golfer?
Learn what makes the ball go where it goes. In other words, if a ball, for a player my right-handed player who might hit it straight left or slice it, and they think, oh my God, there's so many things that I'm doing wrong, and yet the commonality is swing path. So if they understand that swing path is the same and the face just varies, and that creates those different shots. So understanding what swing path is, what club face is, and what effects it has. Also understanding where the bottom of the golf swing is. You know, for an iron shot, it's going to be after they've hit the ball rather than before they've hit the ball. So that same golfer who has the bottom of the swing before the ball, and they know that because their divot on the ground is going to tell them that. So if the bottom of the swing is before the ball, then some shots they're going to hit thin. They might even top it, they might even miss it. And other shots they're going to hit behind the ball and hit it fat, and they're going to think, oh my God, how many things am I doing wrong? And it's the one thing, the bottom of the swing's in the wrong spot. So understanding just those things, Gary Vearing called them the ball flight rules. And while there's debate about whether they're relevant or not, they're actually still pretty correct. So understand what club face means, where does it aim, what effect does that have, what about the path of the club through the ball, what effect does that have, and what are the combinations of those things. And the other three things are centeredness of contact, where do you hit the ball in the club face and what effects does that have. On a cold Melbourne winter's morning, you hit the ball out of the toe of the club, then your numb fingers for the next 4 holes will tell you that you've done that. The angle of attack to the ball, so with an iron shot, you want to strike the ball with a shallow, descending blow, so again, the low point's ahead of the club. And the fifth thing is club head speed. So club head speed is relevant, and for the guys, that's what they're mostly about, to get those 250 metre drives. But what it'll tend to do is exacerbate whatever error is involved with those other four things. So understanding the ball flight rules is critical, because then when you're on the golf course, you hit a particular shot, that if it goes straight, well then you know why, and you can reproduce it. But if a ball doesn't go straight, then you can do some form of self-analysis, say, well, the club is doing this to impact, so this is what I actually need to do. And then the body will make the adjustment to accommodate that.
Okay. So wasn't one of the questions, but I'm sure 90% of golfers all like to hit the ball further. Do you have one or two little tips that you could pass on to the club golfer that they can use to help them hit the ball further?
Yep. The surprising thing is that you, as an average club golfer, to hit the ball further, you probably don't need more club head speed.
Okay. What do you need to do then?
You need to strike the ball more solidly. So let's say a player hits a shot and the club face isn't square, then the ball is going to be struck with a glancing blow. If the path of the club through impact is not square, then the ball will be struck with a glancing blow. The more of a glancing blow, the more energy is lost. So the player needs to learn how to make solid contact to start with. And to do that, most of it's going to come back to just getting the basics right, getting set up correctly, understanding what correct swing path is, and that'll pretty much do it.
Okay.
It sounds simple, I know. And look, it'll only take you 20 years to learn it. No, that's not quite true. But understanding those things and getting square, solid contact, it's surprising. Players will say, I'm swinging the club shorter. But how come the ball's going further? It's because the contact's solid.
I think one of the things that many club golfers can relate to is when they're sort of in the trees and they're just trying to chip out, get back on the fairway. They don't try to hit it so hard, they have to hit it low to keep it under the branches. They quite often hit that shot further than what they do when they're in the middle of the fairway trying to smack it hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, now, one of your specialties probably for the last 10 to 15 years has been working with probably elite juniors who want to become golf professionals. What's the best advice you can give to a young junior coming up who their dreams of being the next Jeff Ogilvy or Tiger Woods or being a US PGA Tour player?
More than anything, learn how to practice properly, learn how to train properly. And that involves all aspects of development. So if they're working on their golf swing, their game, they need to learn to manage their practice and balance their practice between long game, short game and putting. I said before that putting makes up 40%, long game makes up 40% and short game makes up 20%. But inside that 20% of short game shots you have massive variety, so it's best to balance them out roughly 1/3 each. Inside each of those thirds you want to do about 1/3 of technical development, so your practice session doesn't depend solely on trying to get your backswing right with a driver. That'll make up about 1/9 of your practice. So get the technique right, then build in variety. Now what that does is it challenges what you're doing. So variety can be altering your club, your target, your shot shape, all those sorts of things. And then the final thing is testing it. So building in competitive skills. So I'm going to, if it's putting, I'm going to hit 10 putts from 1 metre from the hole and count how many I get out of 10. I'm going to do that drill 3 times a week and I'm going to track my progress over time. And a player might start out holing 3 out of 10. And then after 2 or 3 months, they might be holing 7 out of 10, and the reflection will be in their score on the golf course. So it's setting up competitive drills. So balancing between long game, short game and putting, and then technical development, adding variety and competitive work. And that's just the technique side of it. Then they've got to understand that their body's important, how they train. They don't need to train like a marathon runner, they don't need to train like a sprinter, they don't need to train like a weightlifter, but they need to have good body function in order to be able to swing the golf club well. They need to understand mental skills, so they need to develop competitiveness, concentration. They need to understand that they need to retain composure, all of those sorts of things. Once they develop those, then they need to be able to take their game onto the golf course, so the strategic side kicks in. What shots should I hit in which situations, why should I hit them, all of those sorts of things. So all those elements come in. And then the last thing, which I said earlier on, sort of philosophically, is that what happens off the golf course is going to influence what happens on the golf course.
We've seen that with Tiger Woods, haven't we?
I've seen it with a lot of players. And it's how do you manage that? Because life's going to throw up curveballs off the golf course, and if that happens on the way to a competitive round, and you're still going to play, what do you do about that? So what coping mechanisms do you put in place? So they're some of the things that we actually work on with the better players. We've got a little bit more time, a lot more time with them in most cases. We have to address those things.
Okay. So the average club golfer fights a slice. What's the best tip you can give the club golfer that fights a slice?
Well, this sort of gets us back to understanding the ball flight law. So if it's a slice, then the club head, will definitely be swinging across to the left.
Okay.
So that's usually, the term used for that is outside to in, so it swings across the left. Produces a glancing blow which makes the ball curve to the right. Depending on where the ball struck on the club face and depending on whether how the club face is aimed, whether it's square or aimed to the right of the target as well, that'll increase the slice. If it's a longer club with more club head speed, that again is going to accentuate it. So hence you'll slice a driver more than you'll slice a 5-0, and you'll slice that more than you'll slice a wedge. So the first thing is to, even practicing, go into a bunker, mark a line in the sand, which is your imaginary line toward the target. Make some swings so that you actually take a cut of sand and try and get that cut of sand to go to the right, because it's normally going to the left. Try and make it go to the right. And the more you do that, when you first do it, it's going to feel so weird. It's like, how can I possibly hit the golf ball like this? But then your body will become more accustomed to doing that, and then you put a golf ball there and you do the same thing, and all of a sudden the ball flies straight. You won't actually do, when a golf ball's there, you won't actually do what you think you're doing in the bunker. There'll be a slight modification or reverting back to what you were doing before, but you're likely to hit it pretty straight.
So what are some of the challenges you faced along the way? You've been one of our top coaches in Australia. I'm not sure how many hundreds of golf pros there are, but you've been one of our top 5 for the last 20 odd years. What are some of the challenges you've faced?
Challenges can come every day, but they come in different size, different form. From a coaching challenge can be, if it's in a team environment, there might be the team is underperforming for seemingly no reason. So let's say we have a really strong team, so that the expectation is they're going to perform really well, and in the early part of the tournament they don't. So there's that challenge. Then there's a challenge of on the lesson tee every day, where a player doesn't seem to be moving forward, and as a coach I take full responsibility for that. So it's like, okay, what am I going to do about this? How am I going to get around this? Particularly if the player, say, is quick to anger or something like that. And so you can sense that shift in their emotion is going to make it more difficult for them to improve. So then how do we manage that? But then also, a big challenge for me at the moment is creating a business around coaching, what I'm doing. I've had the luxury over the last 20 odd years of working for other organisations where I've sort of implemented coaching programs and coached and everything like that. That was fine. But now I've got to do it all by myself, for myself. So there's challenges there as well from a business development sense.
Okay.
So they never stop.
All right. So if there's one thing a club golfer could do right now to improve their golf game, so they want something that's going to improve their game of golf this afternoon or tomorrow, what could they do?
Wow, improvement for this afternoon or tomorrow. If they had a little bit longer, I'd say practice exactly the same as the other person. If they're looking to improve tomorrow, then I would say it's got to be a strategic thing. So when you go and play on the golf course, you might be playing on a course you're totally familiar with, you've played it hundreds of times, but consider why you have decided to hit this particular club on this hole off the tee. So why have you decided to do that? And if your response is a shrug of the shoulders and say, well, that's what I've always done, well, it's probably not good enough. And you'll get the result that you've probably got too, which might not be satisfactory. So, but if you think, well, there's a bunker there and I've always tried to just land beside it, but the fairway there is really narrow. And I often run into the bunker, or in an attempt to avoid it, I hit it into the trees on the side of the fairway, the other side of the fairway. What if I just hit a shot at the bunker, but with a club that's not going to reach it? Sure, I'll have a longer shot to the green, but I'm guaranteeing myself that I'm going to hit the ball off grass rather than out of sand or out of the trees.
So more course management is something that people
Absolutely.
do straight away. That's where Jack Nicklaus was the absolute master.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course management.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you can pull off the shot, but if your thinking is correct, then you'll be fine. In fact, Brent Russell has this great quote, and I've used it so many times, and he said, The objective of every competition is the execution of a perfect strategy. And I say to players, if you're to be true to that statement, what information do you need about the golf course and about your own game in order to develop a perfect strategy? Maybe perfect is not quite right, maybe an excellent strategy. It doesn't mean you're going to pull it off, but if you have that great strategy, then you're going to probably save yourself a lot of shots.
Okay. Alright, so how can people get in contact with you? Because now you're sort of easing back on your commitments, like with the national coaching, and it's a great opportunity for the club golfer to actually learn from one of Australia's best coaches. How can people get in contact with you?
Well, they can either contact me two main ways. One is either by contacting the Vearing Golf Club, which is where I coach, and their numbers on the website, yarrabendgolf.com.au, or they can contact me through my own website, which is golfpossibilities.com.au, and on there there's the ability to contact me either via email or by phone.
Alright, thanks Pete, thanks for your time, and hopefully all you club golfers and elite level golfers can apply some of the strategies that Pete has shared with us today. So happy golfing.
Yep. Learn to train properly and you'll go ahead in leaps and bounds.
Thanks Peter.
Thanks Gav.